Loud aircraft noise exposure is now an excuse for obesity. A drunk elementary teacher out of California has her charges dropped because apparently it's not illegal to teach while intoxicated. And brace yourselves, ladies. The New York Times has declared this the summer of Rodent Men. It's time for my losers of the week. And later, a survey concludes the obvious. Biden voters view family and marriage as far less important to society than Trump voters. I've got Alec Lace, host of Class Fatherhood podcast, on deck to discuss. The show starts now. So it seems like we get a new excuse for morbid obesity on a weekly basis at this point, because the narrative has become, if you're fat, it couldn't possibly be your fault. Well, breaking news, 95% of the time, it is. But a new study has birthed yet another excuse: aircraft noise exposure. According to a study conducted by researchers at Boston and Oregon State Universities and published in the Environment International paper, regular exposure to loud aircraft noise could be linked to obesity. The research found that nurses living near airports who endured noise 45 decibels or higher were 5% more likely to be obese, and the louder the noise, the likelihood increases to 11%. Interesting research, but sorry, that's quite a stretch. Loud noise isn't fun, and it might cause a person to sleep poorly, but it doesn't make a person eat like crap or refuse to exercise. And even if there is a connection, even if it is harder for certain individuals to lose weight, I'd remind everyone that having 1,000+ things to blame it on doesn't alleviate the problem. Only you can do that. Noise doesn't make you fat. You make yourself fat. There you go, a dose of reality. But moving on to another unpleasant reality. Apparently, in California, it is not in fact illegal to teach while drunk. You learn something new every day. Wendy Munson, a second-grade teacher, was initially arrested after teaching her students while intoxicated. She failed a sobriety test and was twice the legal limit 2 hours after she was initially arrested. And while she may have been fired for her actions, she faces no charges because, according to District Attorney Jennifer Dupree, it is not illegal to teach drunk, and there is no proof intoxication would endanger the kids. Folks, I think I've heard it all. It seems we'd be hard-pressed to find something that is truly illegal in California at this point. But speaking of things that are hard to find, men are hard to find. Decent men, men who identify as men in general. But the bar in this search has seemingly been lowered once again. According to the New York Times Style and Popular Culture, this summer is for the rodent men. Men that embody this new version of American sex symbols are men like Travis Barker, Maddie Healy, Jeremy Allen White, and, well, you get the idea. They are the poster rats, I suppose. Now look, to each their own. It's not my style personally, but that's fine and dandy. But if this is the new standard for men, I shudder to think what it'll be 5 years from now. Lucky us, ladies. But in all seriousness, I don't really care about the aesthetic future of manhood that much. I care more about restoring what it is to be a man, the character, the values, the tradition that's been lost. My next guest dedicated his very popular podcast to that very thing. Joining me now ahead of Father's Day is host of Class Fatherhood podcast, Alec Lace. Alec, it's great to have you back, especially ahead of Father's Day. So before we jump into fatherhood and some disturbing trends, I want to get your take on the summer of rodent men. What is your thought on that trend?
Yeah. Hello, Tommy. It's great to see you again as well. Yeah, this is a disgrace here. This is the problem that we've seen time and time again. We have destroyed what it means to be a man in this country. We've made men afraid to be men. And if we cannot restore manhood, restore fatherhood, restore the family, we have no shot of restoring the country. So it's, we need young men especially need idols to look up to. What's interesting, Tommy, is growing up, you had action heroes to look up to. Like, you had Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Chuck Norris. And today, even you have all these hero guys to look up to. Half of them identify as women. They have transgender kids. The whole thing has been a joke, and it's a joke on men. And that's why you talk about Father's Day. The hashtag dad jokes is going to be the thing trending. We're all going to dump on dads. Dad's a dope. Dad's an idiot. And that's usually the trend that we see, unfortunately, during the weekend.
Yeah, and then there are also a lot of, I would assume, liberal, disgruntled, bitter women who just hate the idea of fatherhood in general. They advocate for single motherhood. Not that we don't understand that there is, a situation in which single motherhood is unavoidable for some, but the fact that it's been glorified and almost preferred by especially liberal women today, that's a disturbing trend that I want to get into in a moment. But first, I have to bring up the survey to you and get your thoughts on it. It's something that I didn't find shocking or surprising at all, but according to registered voters, this is a Pew Research poll, Biden voters say society is better, or actually Trump voters say that society is better off when people prioritize marriage and family and children. Biden supporters, not so much, far less likely to see those things as important. Again, not shocking, not surprising. Conservatives generally tend to view family, marriage, those things as more important. But that's a pretty big disparity when you look at this poll. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it makes sense, Tommy. I mean, the left, the progressives, the Marxists, the communists, they are against the family. They seek to destroy, like BLM, seek to destroy the nuclear family. So why would they want to support marriage and family? I mean, their whole goal is to break down the family. They don't want men in the picture. They don't want men in the home. They don't want fathers to be around. And they have gotten rid of the father. And that's part of the big epidemic that we have, is this fatherless crisis in the country. Not enough people talk about it. But yeah, they glorify. You see this thing on TikTok with the dinks, dual income, no kids. The left wants to just anything to do with marriage, the sanctity of marriage, faith, fatherhood. They want no part of that. And I'm surprised that number is even at 19%. It's probably actually a lot lower than that.
Yeah, it is disturbing. I mean, listen, I understand that there's a lot of different lifestyles out there and people need to make their own decisions, what's best for them. As much as I think marriage and family is important, I can't dictate what other people do. But I think what's disturbing is that young people, through pop culture, are seemingly being led to believe that marriage and family is antiquated, that it puts you in a box, that it restricts you. And that's why people seem to have such an uproar and a backlash to Harrison Butker in his commencement speech, where he said, hey, listen, marriage and family is important. Masculinity is important. When I heard that commencement speech and I saw all the backlash, you're kind of the first person I thought of, because you've been preaching a very similar message. What do you think about the people that are so upset with Harrison Butker and also the people that are seemingly defending Harrison Butker? What does that tell you about society?
Yeah, Tommy, I put up a post on Twitter that went viral right after he made that speech. And I made the comparison and the contrast against Travis Kelce, who put on the show for his graduation, that had the president of the college there. And here he goes in his cap and gown, getting his degree. He slams a beer and slams it down on the ground. And everyone goes crazy for this. They call it brilliant in the media. Everyone loved it. They celebrated. Here comes Harrison Butker giving a commencement speech about family, about fatherhood, about faith. And they destroy the guy because it upsets the Marxist ideology. So they can't have a guy like that be prominent and making statements like that. They have to go out and immediately destroy him. Harrison Butker is talking about the glue, the factory of this country. Years ago, it would be something, it would be frowned upon for like a man to walk away from his responsibility, to have a kid and leave the home and be unresponsible. He'd be afraid to show his face at the local bar or in the neighborhood somewhere. Today, it's okay. You're accepted into this. We kind of look, you got street credit. Yo, you got a baby mama. You got kids on. So the whole mindset has shifted around this. And Harrison Butker is bringing back the reality of what's going to save this country, and that's going to be the family. This whole thing starts in the home. You want to save the country, you got to save the family. We need more people like Harrison Butker. I've done several interviews with Harrison Butker over the years at the Super Bowls. And this guy is what we need. This is what young kids need to be looking up to and need to hear, because that's ultimately the goal in life, not this fulfillment that they're chasing and all these other things. We believe that this material stuff's going to bring us all this fulfillment in life, and that's not the case. It's going to be through your marriage. It's going to be through the teamwork of your family that's going to bring you the most fulfillment. So I applaud Harrison Butker, and we definitely need to hear more from guys like him.
Yeah. You've interviewed so many people. I mean, the roster that you've had on that podcast really is amazing, exceptional. People that aren't traditionally thought of as conservatives, but just dads who love being dads, who tend to agree with you that fatherhood is important. It's weird that that's a controversial topic, but there's another trend that I think is actually a little bit encouraging, and that's that young men do seem to be moving more towards the right, maybe more towards even the center would be okay. It seems like young women are continuing to trend left, but young men are trending more right. They seem to be, I guess, more supportive of Donald Trump. You see Donald Trump with Jake and Logan Paul. You see him at UFC events. Now, regardless of what you think about Donald Trump politically, it would seem that young men are at least becoming more conservative than they were maybe even 2-3 years ago What do you think accounts for that?
Well, I think the other option is to be a beta male who depends on somebody else. You can't take care of yourself. You have no sense of responsibility. So men, that's not who we are. That's not who men are internally. That's not who we are genetically. Men are out there. We are born to be providers. This is the stuff that it speaks to the men's ears. It speaks to their soul. That's why people like Andrew Tate has risen up to fame, and guys that are saying, hey, you don't have to buy into this. You're a man, but you have to be afraid to be a man. People are tired of hearing that. So it speaks to the young men, and the left isn't giving them that. The left is telling them to be, quiet. Don't embrace manhood. That stuff is toxic masculinity. And so they're trying to avoid all that. And again, it just goes back to what Harrison Butker was saying, and it preaches to the young men that hear that, and they're like, yeah, that would be nice. And, stay-at-home moms have gotten such a bad rap in this country, Tommy, because even I went through this. I'm married 19 years. We got 4 kids. And at the beginning of our relationship, we made the decision prior to having kids, and my wife was going to stay home. I would work, pick up the extra shifts. I've been working 24 years on the railroad. I've driven a ton of taxis and Uber on the side. I've done everything. There was a super in my apartment building. I picked up the role. I made a sacrifice, and my wife made a sacrifice, and it is a sacrifice. And so many people look down upon the mom that's staying home with the kid like, oh, that's all you do. It's the most important job that we have, and now we look at it as it's a joke. And so it's important for men to be men. It's important for women to be. We're different. We are different people, men and women, and that's okay. I don't know why that became such a bad thing. Like, you can't embrace being a father. You can't embrace being a man anymore. And that's the message from the left. And that's why people from the left, men aren't listening to the people from the left, and they're going to veer right.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see more of that to come.
Yeah, well, there's been some encouraging signs that, frat boys, as much as, I never thought we thought frat boys would maybe resurrect America, or at least American spirit on college campuses. But it seems like they've done that, especially in the face of these pro-terror protests that are attended by men and women, which is really unfortunate. Men, women, men who think they're women, women who think they're men. It's all really just a mumbled jumbled mess on a lot of these college campuses. But you brought up something that I think is important to touch on, though, and that's Andrew Tate, and I want to get your thoughts on him. Now, listen, some of the things he says I think are important for young men to hear about bringing and masculinity, being proud to be a man. But some of the things that he says are quite frankly abhorrent, and they are just kind of, to me, a bridge too far. So I'm wondering if you think maybe we need to delineate between people like Andrew Tate. I would shudder to think that he would be a poster child for, masculinity or manhood. I would rather have someone like a Harrison Butker be that person, or some of the many men that you've interviewed on your podcast. So what do you think about that? Do you think that we need to have a disclaimer there about some of the things he says?
Tommy, what I think is, because of the way that this has been trending, and the way that we have attacked men, the way that we have emasculated men, the way that has happened has given rise to the Andrew Tate. He's born from that entire thing happening, because he's the extreme. So you're going to get people that are going to they don't want to listen to this stuff that they're being told. Shut your mouth. You don't have to, you can't embrace being a man. They don't want to hear that. So here you come Andrew Tate. He's telling you all the complete opposite. He's the polar opposite of all that. And that's why he rose to fame. You wouldn't have Andrew Tate if you didn't have this breakdown of the family, this emasculation of men. You wouldn't have him. He wouldn't even be prominent. The reason he's out there, and the reason why people are flocking to him, is because they're desperate to look up to somebody that's telling them, hey, you could be a man, screw that, and take charge of your own life and all this other stuff. So he's preaching to what so many young men in this country are desperate to hear. And so, yes, I agree. Harrison Butker is the guy to shoot for, but Andrew Tate is born out of this whole thing that they've destroyed masculinity. That's what you're going to get. And you're going to probably see another guy like Andrew Tate rise to stardom because of it.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. I think people sometimes gravitate towards the extremes because it's easier to identify with an extreme because you know what it is and you know what it looks like. I want to dive into a topic that I think is maybe for some people a little controversial, and I kind of go back and forth on it myself. But I've seen, a few people in pop culture. I watch a lot of reality television. So there's been 2 that I can think of that are Bravo stars. Lala Kent being one, Ebony K. Williams being another. She actually used to work at Fox News, but that have gone the IVF sperm donor route. That's nothing new. Sperm donors have been around for a long time. But I think it's interesting the way that society responds to that, because these children that are born out of, sperm donation, they're never really going to have a father or know what their father was. It really is just, I guess, a name on a piece of paper that they might not even ever understand or realize. And while I understand that there are some women that want to be moms so badly that they have to go that route, or they feel like they have to go that route, I'm really interested your take on it and how society has responded to that phenomenon.
Well, number one, it's tough because I do know people that have gone through that process because either the man couldn't get her pregnant, or they had difficulties, they weren't getting pregnant, they were losing pregnancies. There's families that have tried to have kids, and IVF has been the way that they've been able to do it. But the thing is, Tommy, IVF, this is a business. That's what this thing is. This is a money-making business. So don't forget that. That's first and foremost. This is something that's being promoted as an alternative. And when you're using it as that and saying, well, I'm going to go that route instead of going the natural way, that's where I think it becomes an issue. I mean, they give you that option to go for that. And I understand there's so many situations that everyone's situation is different. And so I'm not going to, look down upon a family that had their children that way because it was the only way they could do it, or it was their route to having a family. But I do think that that's a very small percentage of the people that are choosing it, and I think it's just being pushed on people because it is a big moneymaker for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. It's a huge industry. The IVF and surrogacy and all of that has really been mainstreamed by reality television. The Kardashians being, a family that's obviously kind of pushed that into prominence, and people kind of identify with it. It's something that's really only for the 1%. Not a lot of people could afford to have a surrogate and all that. But, we just have a lot of conversations about what family looks like. And I don't think that there is one picture of a family. I understand everybody's got different life circumstances. I don't look down on anybody who has a family that's maybe less traditional. I think what's important is just the idea of family and whatever that looks like, and togetherness, and bringing people back around the kitchen table and spending time with one another. And I think one of the big disruptors to that has been technology and screens. You and I have talked about this before, but I think we need to dive back into it for those that didn't see our previous episode about what screens are doing to family dynamics. Kids on their phones, parents on their phones, parents using screens as babysitters. When you look at that and your understanding of what parenthood is, what do you think about the use of screens in families?
Man, this is very difficult, Tommy. I got 3 teenage boys, and then we have our daughter who's 9. I have one just graduated high school. You can get control of the screens with your kids at a young age. You can control all of that. But once they start getting older, they become teenagers, it gets more and more difficult to do that. And here's the problem. This is like a catch-22 or a big dichotomy, is because a big part of their future and their success is going to come through their ability to use this technology for their own benefit. So it's hard to tell them, hey, don't learn this, when everything that's moving right now at 1,000,000 miles an hour is happening on that screen and in that internet world. So if you're trying to keep them away from it, they're going to fall behind, especially if they're trying to market themselves, if they're trying to learn how to use these tools that are going to benefit them in their careers going forward. So it's very hard to do. I mean, listen, I'm in a position now where my kids know a lot more about it. There's no way I could stop them from getting on this stuff. They know more about. I'm asking them, hey, guys, I'm trying to watch this. How do I get this thing on the TV here? They look at me like I'm a dinosaur. Oh, Dad, give me this thing. Boom, they have it on in 2 seconds. So they're far more advanced because they pick it up quicker. It's the world that they were born into. The problem is the downside of this has become kids are exposed, and the number one giant in the room with this is the pornography that's available at the tip of their fingers. That's the big issue here. There's almost no way to prevent them from it. So when kids in my generation were young, it was still pictures in magazines was the big pornography. If one kid had a Playboy magazine in the school, he was like the guy everyone huddled around his locker to get a peek. Here today, all the kids have to do is have one kid in the school that has a phone. They Google naked woman, and they got all these explicit videos that they're exposed to. So it's so hard to prevent them from getting into it. The only thing you can do is have these conversations. Now, we're forced to have these conversations with our kids a lot earlier now than we have ever before, but they're going to get on it. You have to have the assumption that my kid is going to be exposed to this. So let me get out ahead of it and have a conversation about it. So at least you can be open and have that relationship where your kid can come and talk to you. The last thing you want to have is the kid, being afraid to come to you when he discovers something on the internet or something's going on. You want to keep that line of communication and trust open instead of trying to tell them just don't get on there. Don't stay away from the internet. And then, be naive, stick your head in the sand and think, oh, my kid's not using the internet. So you have to approach it, and you got to try to educate yourself on what's going on. Follow the trends. Get on TikTok. See what the kids are looking at, because if it's popular, your kid is watching it. Your kid is involved in it. You have to assume that going in. So don't be naive. Don't think that it ain't not my kid. So follow the trend, see what's going on, and have these conversations.
Well, I think too, when it comes to screen usage, for me, it's just when people are so obsessed with their screens that they can't pull themselves away from it. And when I see young children and I see them just fixated on an iPad or a phone, to me, they're being robbed of real experiences, real interaction. And, as a father of teenagers and a young daughter that's going to be a teenager before you know it, I'm wondering what you're seeing the trends are in the schools now. What is it like to be a teenager now? Do young boys and teenage boys, do they still want to go and date girls and have, go out and drive? Because it feels like there's a lot of young people now that have become recluse. Like they'd rather just sit on a phone in their room or play video games, and they don't have that same desire to go out and get a driver's license or go out on dates or go to sporting events. It seems like it's shifted, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there still is young people that are traditional in some ways.
Well, I have it both in my family. My oldest, who just graduated high school, is that way. He is more reclusive. He is more into the phone world and stuff like that. He didn't get his driver's license, and it's something that we've tried to have these conversations with all the kids in his class. Same thing. No interest in getting a driver's
So why
license.
is that? I want to ask about that because that's so bizarre to me. For me, I grew up in South Dakota. I got my driver's license when I was 14 years old. So it's bizarre to me that kids 14, 15, 16, 17, they don't have any desire to have independence. Why? Why do they tell you that they don't want to do it?
I have no idea, Tommy. I go through this with my oldest son, and I tell him the same things you did. Like that was like a rite of passage. Nobody could wait to get. Now I have a 16-year-old who's got his permit. He's got me up every morning. Hey, can I drive the car? Can I drive the car? He's begging and dying to do it. So he's all about driving the car. My oldest guy, he could take her to leave it. If he ever gets his license or not, he seems to not care. And I can't understand that mentality. I try to have conversations about him, but I don't understand it. I don't get that mindset. And it's not just him. There's a lot of kids that are in the same boat. They have, you know what it is? They have this easy access to Uber, and they rely on that. I'll just Uber where I got to go. So I think, that mindset has been different when it comes to that. I don't get it. My 16-year-old ain't that way. My 13-year-old, he seems to be already talking about what car he wants to get and stuff like that. So I don't think I'm going to see it with him either. But I have seen both of those worlds with my older two boys.
I wonder if COVID has something to do with it. I wonder if the lockdowns and the shutdowns in that really integral age for young people around your son's age, when they were told it was dangerous to go outside and they were told that they should learn at home. And that's something that was widespread in those really important formative years. I wonder if that has something to do with just the lack of desire to be independent and to go out in the world. Seems like maybe they were discouraged from doing that.
And you're right on the money there with that. My son was in 8th grade when COVID hit. He didn't finish 8th grade. His whole freshman year was online. So he was in that category when that happened. And they'll be studying the after effects of this COVID-19 for decades to come. Who knows? You may even be able to get a degree in COVID, response someday. It'll go right alongside with your psychology degree or something like that, so, or your activism degree that'll be worthless. But I don't know. They'll be studying this stuff for decades. That could play a part in it. I really don't know. It's happening in my own family, and I don't understand that mindset. And like I said, I have that both sides of the coin where one can't wait to drive and one doesn't care. So I never had nobody in my grade growing up, nobody in my age range didn't want to get their license. We didn't see that at all. So I really don't comprehend it.
Last thing I want to bring up with you, because it just occurred to me and I want to get your thought on it. So I think it's important to have discussions about mental health. I think that a lot of young people are suffering from mental health issues. I don't think it's new. I think the young people have always struggled with mental health because they're growing up and their worlds are changing. And I think that that's something that's always been present, whether they've talked about it or not. Now it's become much easier to talk about mental health. There's resources for mental health. There's discussions about mental health, dialogue, communication, all good things. But I do think that young people, to an extent, have maybe used their mental health and their inner peace as an excuse and an entitlement to not do things or to be lazy or to shirk responsibilities. I've noticed that with young people that I have in my life, that they can use mental health as a get out of jail free card to not have to do things because they're protecting their mental health. What's your take?
Yeah, we definitely see this. And anytime you give somebody a built-in excuse to fail, there's going to be an issue with this. And that's what the mental illness thing has happened. It's given people a built-in excuse to say, this is why I did this. And now, is there an issue with the mental health? Obviously, yes. But what is the solution to this? Every solution ends in you taking a prescription drug that's going to alter your mind with 17 different side effects. That's what the only fast track is to this stuff. You know, you say your kid has mental health. What does that mean? It means we have to put him on some type of medication. This is $1 billion industry. They're putting your kids on medications younger and younger and younger. And the answer is always, oh, he has this mental illness, so let's put him on some type of pill that they came out with. And then 5 years later, everyone's suing that company because the side effects, you know, were disastrous. So I don't know. I think communication is the best thing. That's why I think, you know, you'll see it more prominent in families that don't have, you know, stay together. Their kids are suffering from these issues. We see it with everything across the board. You know, even, you know, we talk about the shootings and the gun problem that we have in this country. Kids that have come from fatherless homes are 279% more likely to carry guns and deal drugs. So all these things, a lot of this stuff can be solved by having your family together and in support of your children going forward and having these lines of communication. I think that does more than any prescription drug you're going to get that's going to try to mask the actual problem that's going on in your life. I mean, that's the key to it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, thank you for taking all this time ahead of Father's Day. A very happy Father's Day to you and all the wonderful fathers that you have on your podcast, First Class Fatherhood podcast. You have some incredible people on that podcast, wide ranging. I encourage everybody to go check it out. You do amazing work, and you're really bringing fatherhood and manhood back to the forefront, which is so important. So thank you for joining me today. Happy Father's Day, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you, Tommy. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there.
Thanks so much, Alec. All right, folks. Terrorist-linked illegals are streaming across our southern border, but I'm sure they're just in search of the American dream. It's time for final thoughts. So terrorists coming into our country through Biden's wide open border, well, that's no laughing matter, but it is a hard reality. This week, thanks to the relentless work of ICE agents and the FBI, 8 illegal immigrants linked to ISIS were arrested in New York, LA, and Philadelphia. All 8 men hail from Tajikistan, and all came through our southern border illegally this year. But Biden's DHS says they were vetted and allowed to remain in our country. But upon further investigation, it was uncovered they have ties to ISIS. But I'm sure they're just here pursuing the American dream. What a joke. Now, I don't blame Border Patrol for the botched vetting because agents are so overwhelmed, and a lot of these illegals coming across from terrorist-linked nations don't have the credentials to vet because countries like Tajikistan don't provide that info to the United States. And why would they? They want to kill us. That's the exact reason why we shouldn't be letting these people into our country at all. Why are we a charity case for the rest of the world and we put our own citizens at risk? This is beyond self-sabotage. This is treason. You'll notice these possible terrorists went to sanctuary cities, but despite that fact, the voters in these deep blue sanctuary cities will still undoubtedly vote Democrat. And folks, more of these people are on the way. Just take a look at this line of dreamers captured by Fox News just this week. Siri, what is treason? That right there. Now, officials say part of the reason we can't deport a lot of these BS asylum-seeking illegals is that their home countries won't take them back. Perfect. Let's start shipping them to Canada. Trudeau is so loving and tolerant, so let's send the 10 million illegal immigrants his way and we'll call it a day. But those are just my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern for my special sit-down with a California teacher who was fired for refusing to push the trans agenda on her school children. She sued, she won, and now she's telling all. So catch the interview tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. Until then, from Nashville, God bless and take care. What's up, guys? Thank you for watching Tomi Lahren is Fearless. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you'll never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday and I hope you'll join me.